That's why Mark's interesting and maddening at the same time.
Everything that you know about this case comes from me. I realize that. I'm aware of that.
Gosh, I wish I knew what was credible with him because I just don't even know what you can believe. I do believe that Mark knew her, but back in the 90s, he was withholding a lot of information.
That brings us to today's video. I'm going to be using my certifications in high stakes communication and credibility analysis to be able to better understand the person who is Mark Goodyear. This is not the first video that I have done on the Fox Hollow Farm murder case. If you haven't seen the other videos, I suggest you go and check them out. They're in the link in the description of this video. It'll give you the backstory and a little bit more context as to what we're working with in this video itself. I'll also be relying on information that I gleaned in that video to add baseline clarity to what we're working with today. I'm going to be working with my new setup here, which again is going to be the Logitech editing hub system sort of situation, along with the Huion tablet and live annotation software. I have not used this often. I've only done one video here on the channel before, and so I'm sorry about the discomfort that you'll probably run into here and there as I'm trying to get through this, but I think that that's enough of the talking about everything. Let's go ahead and dive into the actual content itself.
Do you think that Herb worked alone? Or did he have an accomplice?
Okay. Now, you've seen the size of this site. Do you think one person could do that by themselves? Okay.
So, we're going to see a lot of interesting nonverbal communication from Goodyear. Something that I pointed out in the prior videos is that he likes the aspects of the performance of this entire case. It seems as though he's reveling in the attention that he's getting from within this case. If you haven't seen the actual documentary series, both the first season and what's come out of the second season, I do suggest you go and watch that. That'll add a lot of clarity. Again, context and account will go into that, but we will still be able to glean some information from this. Regardless, something that we're able to get from that very initial starting point here, even though there's only a few seconds, is the kind of overall tone that Goodyear likes to take into these interviews, these sessions that he has here. And it's this tone of control. Control is a really big aspect of what Mark Goodyear appreciates within this. And people have a lot of questions around him, but his control shows up in this area as he's semi-interrupting the interviewer again. Before the interviewer has fully finished their question, he's already kind of cutting in there. But this is going to be heavily cut up, switched around. This is all that I was able to draw out from the second season of the Fox Hollow Farm murders. This has been going really, really well over on my TikTok, which I'm sure some of you probably didn't even know I have a TikTok. I have a TikTok and I'm almost never active over there, but it's really popping off over there, so people are wanting me to take a look at it, so I'm putting it here. It might make it over to TikTok once again.
I didn't think anything of it at that time. That first night here at the farm, I hadn't been inside the house yet, but I noticed Herb Baumeister did pull the passenger side of the car, the tire, up onto a rise in the driveway, and he had that passenger headlight of the car way up to where it would go right into the windows upstairs in that apartment that's over there. I think he was signaling, I know he was, because the next action that he took after he panned that headlight across those windows, he pounds on the steering wheel, both fists. You can't depend on anybody anymore, something to that effect, you know. He was trying to signal somebody.
This is interesting. In this part, I would believe Mark Goodyear's, at least his narrative that he's presenting here. The context around it is where it starts to get difficult, but I don't think that really anybody is arguing that Mark Goodyear made it out to the Baumeister Fox Hollow Farm location kind of thing. That seems to be pretty well accepted. The reason that I'm believing Mark throughout this is because of the spatial gestures that he's using. And they're consistent spatial gestures. It adds a little bit more credibility because it kind of signals that the person is able to put themselves back into the 3D space in which they were to begin with. So he's gesturing and he's talking about the lights going up and he gestures up. And then as he's continuing the narrative, he keeps the kind of spatial recollection of how things go, where he's saying that, and then they came down, and then he pounded on the steering wheel. And so these spatial gestures like that are staying consistent with his narrative, it pushes towards his authenticity, towards his credibility. Now, again, the details around this, the interpersonal dynamics, some of the social dynamics around it, things like that, that's where a lot of people are not so certain, and understandably so. But at least in this area, I would believe that this is his understanding of things. I do still have some suspicion around his naivety in it of like, ooh, I think he was signaling somebody or something like that. That part I'm not as positive about. But at least I do believe that upon one of the times that he showed up at the Fox Hollow Farms, I do believe that this is sort of the way that it played out, just going by his spatial gestures in there.
Would assume that there was somebody in that apartment, or was supposed to be in that apartment that first night that I showed up here. And then finally, when we finally did get down into the actual home itself, everything is set up. Everything's ready. But it looks like I'm going to have to clear up my own mess, doesn't it? I'm not going to have any help.
This one's focusing more on the verbal. So something that I'll go ahead and refresh everybody here. If you're here on the channel, I function through what's called the SCANS method. And SCANS stands for 6-Channel Analysis System. And that's the methodology of behavioral analysis that holds to the concept that human communication flows through 6 different channels, not just the body, but also the voice. Within the SCANS method, we do use aspects of other verbal analyses, including CBCA, but one of the portions that's focused on is tenses and the switching therein within a narrative. So within this, as Goodyear's going through, he's talking about something in the past, and then he jumps to something in the present here, and that tense jumping while still maintaining the narrative. From my understanding and from what I'm watching here, he's talking about how he had shown up at this place, and then I think what I'm assuming this is trying to imply here is that he's saying that he understood that he had to clean up his own mess then, kind of thing. He got into this situation, he had to clean it up, nobody was there to help him. But while he's talking about it here, he switches that tense, and to me, that pushes me to question a little bit of credibility here. I have questions as to why he does switch that, and one of the reasons that people will do tense switches like that, it can be them putting themselves into the state of which they were in at the time. The rest of his nonverbal communication doesn't seem to promote such a contemplative state of mind. And so the other possibility, along with some others, but one of the possibilities that I'm more curious about is that it could be manufactured. He could be faking this part, or at least manipulating it on some level to be perceived in a specific way. And so this would be considered a pin in this area as I was going through. Definitely would want to try to cycle back around, ask some more questions, something along those lines. But we have some more to be able to go through here.
We believe you.
You can't. So why are you bothering me? I was sitting at my house minding my own damn business. So that's what I'm saying. I don't understand the attraction to it. People are drawn to me because I can say whatever I want to say. And there's no proof. There's no evidence. If Herb Baumeister was alive today, he'd be a free man. Prosecutor will tell you that. There is no evidence. Nothing. It's all gone.
All right, so throughout this, there's a number of things. I'm going to rewind here on the dial, which we'll see how that goes. That's one of the aspects that I have a lot of difficulty with is getting control over this dial. They ask him, how can we trust you? And he responds here, you can't. He has a no shake in there. He does have a little bit, as you can see here, a little bit of tension down here in his mouth. This would be considered perhaps a lip compression, which that usually coincides with a negative emotion, negative information. Lip compressions can come out when you're taking in negative information, when you're giving out negative information. You'll see those start to come out there. That kind of does make some sense. He says you can't, and then he has to no shake in that lip compression. That kind of makes contextual sense with what's going on here. Now, something else that pushes me towards this, everything is orchestrated. He's really focusing hard on the performance of this, is the crashes in between emotional states here. So as you can see here on the screen, it's fairly blank. Like I said, the lip compression, and then we'll scroll forward just a bit here. And we see this obviously fake smile. It does not reach his eyes. You could see down here, there's obviously the full activation around here, although again, very tight-lipped. It's a controlled negative emotion behind it. But then up in his eye region, there's almost no activity from the smile itself. There's a little bit of residual from just the facial movement of the smile itself, but it's not reaching his eyes, which lets us know this is forced, this is fake, it's a performance. Then as you go on further down that, he says a few things here, maintaining the very intense gaze. There's not a lot of blinking or anything like that. And then he bursts into a very intense laugh. Again, I have overt questions of its authenticity. Again, if you're looking, that's just not reaching the eyes. Obviously, the eyes are very intense. He's holding a very direct gaze and the eyes are wide open. But the actual smile itself is having very little effect on the eyes themselves while he's going through this laughter. So again, it's an orchestrated emotional state that he's presenting here, which is centered around perception management and how I had kind of drawn out in the prior videos. He loves the performance. He loves the attention from this. And there's some aspects that start to become more problematic, not the least of which is at the end of this, while he's talking about this, he states with a fair amount of certainty, non-verbally speaking, he doesn't show anything around that would push me away from his authenticity. Everything seems to be synchronized across both his face and his non-verbal communication along with his words. But he's saying that if Baumeister was alive today, he would be a free man. There's just not any evidence for it. And that level of certainty, it kind of demands a level of involvement. If you are involved, you might know what all evidence is known. If you aren't involved, you really don't know. So if he's not involved, there would be gray. There would be a leeway. There shouldn't be. There might not be. There's this possibility that would be in there. He's not stating it that way. He's stating it as a black and white. He knows that there's not the evidence for it, which pushes me to believe that he knows where that evidence is or was, depending on how he kind of handled some things, which that's, again, mentioned in the prior videos where he had some evidence possibly in his possession and a lot of questions came up around that. This is yet just another area of him trying to manage perception while keeping himself inserted into the middle of everything. It's just an interesting aspect of his psyche.
Fetish and death. And that's the way I reported this to the police, that this was, I used the word snuff films, that he was taking snuff films of people.
Something that I found interesting about Goodyear's nonverbal representation about all of this is how quickly he crashes in between various emotional states. Again, that pushes me towards this everything's orchestrated, nothing's really actually authentic coming from him, question everything sort of mindset. But he crashes so severely between overt wheezing laughter that again is forced, doesn't reach his eyes, over to very somber, less emotive nonverbal communication across his face as well. And it's that crashing again, that's that in and of itself is problematic. Emotions, they tend to follow a profile. They have a smooth onset, a peak portion, and then a smooth offset as well. And that duration of those emotions usually lasts between 0.5 and 4.5 seconds, depending on if the stimulus has been repeated or altered or evolved. What starts to become a red flag in nonverbal analysis is when it doesn't have that smooth onset, offset, and duration in there. If it just crashes hard into a specific emotion and then crashes hard out of it, and maybe that emotion is a little bit too long, that's where a lot of these pins, these points of interest start to come up, and he has a slew of them all throughout. So this next little portion that we're going to be watching through here is actually more listening. He left a voicemail. So the way that this worked is that for the second season of Fox Hollow Farm Murders, the whole case around it, he was going to sit down for another interview. But then on the day of the interview, he said, you know what, I'm not going to do that. So he completely cut contact with the entirety of the crew, any of the contacts that were at the location that they were going to be shooting at, which was the actual farm. Complete cold cut contact with everybody. And then later on sent this voicemail through, which even adds more suspicion, which I think there is a decent amount of this, which is just his appreciation of doing suspicious things. I think he likes that attention. I think that that's just part of the aspect of this that he really enjoys. And maybe he's confident enough to do this because he does know that there won't ever be enough evidence to attach him specifically to this case, maybe because he did something with it. There's a lot of pretty important questions around here. Let's do this voicemail portion.
Listen, if you would please loan me the attention. I believe with all of my heart that all of it is there. Every bit of it is there. Absolutely. And in pristine condition. Use your gut, use your temper, use all that stuff.
There's more than one out there. And they do know one another. And as long as they're out there, they're going to keep dying.
I'm a blessed man. I'm not troubled by any of this stuff anymore. Let's grow. All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Bye-bye.
All right, and that's where we're going to wrap this up. I know this is very short, again, because he dipped on the second season, at least so far with what's been released. There's not a lot to be able to go off of for his nonverbal communication, so it is going to be, like I said, relying heavily on the videos that I filmed in the past to be able to tie into this one. Now, what he does throughout this, again, there obviously, the vocal is pretty hard to track within that. It's a voicemail, so it sounds like garbage. You can hear some certainty coming into the words that he's saying where he's like, I believe this and I believe this wholeheartedly, blah, blah, blah. So there's aspects of it, again, where he's presenting this mindset that he almost has extra information that maybe other people do not. But then as he goes on here, I also still find it very interesting, a couple of other verbal perception management, low manipulation things that he does here. He says that he's a blessed man, and that's an intentionally used manipulation tactic by many people, is they'll pull in a religious aspect of things because it's harder to assail. There's more problematic mindsets between attacking somebody for their religion. So a lot of people that are being nefarious will almost use that as a shield. They can do bad things, but then they'll pull in religion to make it to where, like, oh, you can't question it though. Because if you do, you're a bad person. Judging by the rest of how Goodyear has handled everything else, I'm not really buying into this, him being a blessed man. He even mentions it in the other interview where he's talking about some of the religious side of things, and I don't buy it. His behaviors do not reflect the words that he's saying in that area. And then he also tries to frame everything at the very end with this, well, let's just grow from we could all just grow and more or less move on beyond this. And so the way that this is a manipulation is he's framing it as if he's grown and he's moving on, so everybody else should also grow and move on beyond this because that's the bigger thing to do and that's the better thing to do. And so he's the better person and everybody else should catch up with him and be the better person as well. I am very curious to see what happens with the rest of this season of Fox Hollow Farm. Maybe there will be some more interview footage to be able to take a look at, and I certainly will. People have been requesting that I take a look at the things that have been happening so far, so this is my attempt to be able to do that. If you're watching this and you would like to be able to have me look at something else, go ahead and leave it in the comments of this video, or if somebody already has left your idea, go ahead and like that comment and it'll raise it up and make it easier for me to track down and whatnot. You can also reach out to the various socials, or if you needed to send an email or something like that, that's also just fine. If you're watching this and you would like to be able to have some personal training on the system that I use here, the scans method, go ahead and follow the link in the description of this video. If you follow that link over to Emotion Intel, you'll be able to get the world-class training on the scans method. And because you followed that link here on Observe, you'll get an exclusive 50% discount of the course. So it is normally a $500 course, but it will be discounted down to $250 just because you're fans here of Observe. So if you do go and sign up for that, let them know that Observe sent you this way. Say the $250 is too much to be able to afford, especially in the economy that we have right now. There is a free option where if you send in your email, you'll be able to watch one of the full actual lessons from the curriculum itself. And then after that, you will get some follow-up emails regarding the top tips regarding the scans method. I do heavily suggest you do one of those two things. If you can afford the actual class, please go and do that. You will appreciate it, I guarantee you. Also, for full clarity, and because I think it's kind of cool, when you do sign up for that, I get a portion of the amount that you pay to take that course. And so you're not only supporting your future and your understanding of the nonverbal communication within this, but you're also supporting here on the channel. So if you do that, I greatly appreciate it. Super excited for this partnership. It's been a long time in the works, and I'm very proud to be able to be partnered with Emotion Intel. So please go and check out that link in the description of this video. But without further ado, that's all that I've got for the day. My name is Logan, and you have been oh so awesome as you always are, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.